I never imagined a millionaire's cruelty could spark a heartbreaking act of kindness. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The day the world crashed around me. It started like any other Tuesday. The sun was shining, casting soft golden rays across the crowded street. People rushed past, faces drawn and weary, caught up in their mundane lives. I was one of them. But then, it happened. A deafening crash shattered the morning calm, echoing down the concrete canyons of the city. My heart raced, the luxury car sped away, tires screeching, leaving behind a crumpled bike and a sobbing teenager. I felt my breath hitch in my throat. It was my little brother's bike. My fingers trembled as I rushed toward the scene, dread pooling in my stomach. The boy lay on the ground, clutching his leg, tears streaming down his face. In that moment, I saw not just my brother's bike but the dreams we shared, the rides we'd take, the laughter. None of it mattered now. The crowd gathered, murmurs rising and falling like a tide. Who would do this? How could anyone be that careless? A part of me wanted to scream, to shake someone awake to this cruelty. But nothing could wake them. People turned their heads, whispering. Eyes averted from the pain unfolding before them that I knelt beside him, panic clawing at my chest. "Hey, can you hear me?" I whispered, desperately gauging his condition. His eyes met mine in shock, filled with a mixture of fear and confusion. I held his hand tightly, feeling the warmth of his skin against my clammy palm. The world melted away. It was just the two of us. Then, from the fringes of the crowd, a figure emerged. It was him, the millionaire. The man whose name dripped from tongues like honey but not a single soul truly loved. Clad in black designer clothing, he looked down at the boy like a mere insect beneath his shoe. "Move aside," he ordered, his voice icy as he pushed through the stunned crowd that I felt my face flush with anger. The scorn spreading through the whispers fueled my fire. "You did this!" I shouted, rage bubbling up like a boiling pot. But his eyes, piercing and devoid of empathy, met mine. "It was an accident. Not my fault." And just like that, he turned, his back to the crumpled bike and the sobbing child. Part of me couldn't let this stand. My heart pounded in my ears. The last words of the crowd echoed around me. Was this who our world had become? But as I clutched the boy's hand tighter, a flicker of hope ignited within me. Would anyone step forward? Could kindness defeat this cruel heart? And just then, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned, and there stood a stranger, an elderly woman with tears in her eyes. "He needs help," she said softly, her voice shaking. Instinctively, we nodded at each other, a silent promise formed in the heavy air. Would we be enough to challenge this man, to confront this darkness? The crowd held its breath, watching, waiting. Could one act of kindness drown out the crushing blow of wealth's indifference? My heart raced with anticipation as I turned back to the boy. Me brother's bike, me heart filled with uncertainty. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The sirens howled in the distance, growing louder with each passing second, drowning out the murmurs of the gathering crowd. I held my brother's bike tightly against the ground, a deliberate weight holding in a future that now felt splintered. The elderly woman knelt beside me, her hands trembling as she brushed a few strands of hair away from the boy's forehead. The moment felt fragile, like a spider's web glistening with morning dew, beautiful, yet easily broken. "Please stay with me," I whispered to the boy, who pressed his eyes shut, biting back a whimper. I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Panic surged again, coiling tightly in my chest. "Help is coming, okay?" Help is on the way. His name is Sam, the woman said, gently squeezing my hand, anchoring my spiraling thoughts. He's stronger than he looks. Just keep him talking. Sam, I echoed softly, hoping my voice would serve as a lifeline. Hey, you got this, buddy. Can you tell me what happened? Can you move your leg? He opened his eyes, glimmering with pain but also flickering with something fiercely, a spark of defiance. I was riding, and then, I didn't see his breath shattered into sobs, and I squeezed his hand harder, wishing I could absorb the hurt, the fear, the glares shot toward the figure who had inflicted this chaos. The millionaire remained cloaked in indifference, arms crossed, flanked by a few of his suit-clad aides who shifted uneasily under the weight of the onlooker's scorn. I could feel their disdain like a current, crackling in the air. Make him go away, Sam murmured, his eyes pleading. It struck me then this wasn't just a boy on the ground, he was the embodiment of every child who had ever been overlooked, abandoned for the sake of privilege. Stay with me, Sam, I said firmly. We won't let him bully us. You're not alone. That I saw a few heads nod in agreement behind me. The elderly woman's kind eyes sparked an ember within me, a momentary rush of solidarity amid this haunting chaos. But in that moment, I felt utterly powerless. What could I, a mere bystander, do against a man so steeped in wealth and callousness? And then a voice broke through the somber atmosphere. An unexpected shout rang from a man in the crowd, a firefighter, clad in his work uniform. Get that kid off the ground, he called, moving swiftly toward us, the crowd parting like a wave. Well, take care of him. But the millionaire held firm, a stone statue in the storm. I don't understand what the fuss is about. Accidents happen, he said, disdain dripping from each syllable. The crowd surged forward, something powerful igniting their anger. Not like this. One woman shouted, her voice steadfast. Not when carelessness has consequences. The firefighter knelt beside us, quickly assessing Sam's injury. We need an ambulance now, he stated calmly, even as the urgency pulsed beneath his words. And in that whirlwind of desperation and compassion, I felt the strange pull of hope. Maybe we could confront this indifference together, an army of everyday heroes rising against the embodiment of cruelty. But just as I began to breathe again, the millionaire's eyes flicked towards me, catching me off guard. Something shifted in the way he regarded the situation, and for a split second, I sensed a flicker of unease crossing his sharp features, an emotion that looked almost human. What is your name? He asked, his voice cutting through the chaos. Why do you care? I shot back, defensiveness bubbling up again like a shield against the depth of his scrutiny. Because, Hope, he said, his eyes narrowing slightly, you are the one steering this ship. My heart stuttered at the mention of my name, as if he had taken a knife and carved it into the air between us. Before I could respond, the wail of the ambulance siren pierced through the air, and I watched as everything fragmented into sound and motion. EMTs rushed onto the scene, their faces a blend of authority and compassion. But the millionaire remained, chillingly calm amid the unfolding chaos, his smirk widening ever so slightly. What did he know that I didn't? The world buzzed around me as I tried to make sense of his words, and yet, the flicker of hope I had kindled began to dim, replaced by an ominous sense of dread. I felt the tension thickening as he made eye contact once more, an unsaid challenge hanging thick in the air. Was he really just an embodiment of cruelty? Or was there something darker behind his polished facade? And what part of me was he seeking to manipulate? As the medics took Sam under their care, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had triggered something much bigger than I imagined. The world teetered on the edge, choices and consequences intertwining, and as sirens wailed, my heart raced with apprehension. What would happen next? Would kindness be enough to combat the shadows lurking behind golden facades? Without resolution to cling to, I felt the ground shift beneath me, each pulse of uncertainty leading us down an uncharted path. Time stretched thin as the medics worked efficiently, yet the chaos around me felt infinite. I could hardly focus on the unseen clock that marked the seconds since Sam's accident, my mind swirling with questions and fears that sank deeper than the pit in my stomach. The $1 million man had thrown his voice like a grenade into my thoughts, his words echoing and twisting, alive like a serpent coiling around my sense of self that I watched as they carefully lifted Sam onto a stretcher, his young face pale against the bright white of the medical blanket. The weight of vulnerability hung palpably in the air, everyone present could feel it, a collective heartbeat racing with anxiety. I reached out instinctively, brushing my fingers against Sam's shoulder as he was wheeled away. "We're right here," I called, but the sound felt dwarfed by the sirens, by the ensuing panic swelling around us. The crowd, still brimming with anger, began to disperse slowly, yet their murmurs bloomed into whispers of unity. People exchanged names, introduced a stranger to the next, all caught in a patchwork of humanity stitched together through grief and empathy. "Thank you for standing up for him," I heard one woman say to the firefighter, her voice steady, while others nodded in fervent agreement. It was a balm amidst the sting, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, goodwill surged like roots breaking through the asphalt. But then, like a fog rolling in, I sensed the encroaching shadows behind that man's seemingly polished exterior. I turned around to find him still watching, a wry smile curving his lips as if he found amusement in the turmoil unfolding before him. I could hardly breathe, a brutal realization settling in: this was far from over. The prickling sense of dread that gnawed at my insides urged me to take a step forward, confronting him, as if, in doing so, I could peel back the layers of his polished facade. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted, loud enough to capture the attention of the few who lingered, the bewildered bystanders, now graffiti artists painting the world with their outrage and sorrow. His gaze remained unsettlingly calm, and I identified the flicker of amusement in his expression. "Doing what, dear Hope?" he asked insidiously, the layers of his voice dripping with feigned innocence, like honey mixed with venom. "Challenging every important person in your life. Your choices are shaping your reality, whether you realize it or not." Damn, my heart raced at this new level of manipulation, and yet, the sheer audacity with which he carried himself was intoxicating. He operated in a realm beyond right and wrong, venom and sugar. With each word that rolled off his tongue, I felt the rising tide of indignation swell inside me, a surge that demanded to be released. The elderly woman, who had remained quietly supportive, stepped forward. Her face, lined with wisdom, hardened into an expression of fierce protectiveness. "This is not about you," she declared, her voice echoing above the murmured chatter. "It's about the lives your carelessness impacted. A child should never have to bear the burden of your choices." For a moment, surprise flickered across the millionaire's face, as if he hadn't expected someone to challenge him so openly. The crowd's energy shifted, rippling from the old woman's fierce honesty, infecting everyone with a sense of agency. I could feel it stirring in my own chest, the growing confidence that we had power in our collective voice. But just as hope ignited anew, his sharp laughter sliced through the air. "Darling, you think you're fighting a battle here? What does a child's accident matter when there are far greater games at play?" His eyes glinted with a startling mix of malice and amusement, like a storm threatening to break the fragile threads of resolve we had painstakingly woven. Before I could respond, another cry split through the crowd. A woman clutched her phone, her voice trembling as she relayed the news. "The ambulance! It was in an accident just blocks away." My heart dropped, and a wave of cold dread cascaded down my spine. The weight of reality pressed onto me as gasps reverberated through the onlookers. A shadow eclipsed our collective courage, panic rippling through the crowd. Sam, exposed and vulnerable, relied on choices we could not control. That I turned back to face the millionaire, rage mingled with desperation. "You won't get away with this. You can't just walk away and shrug it off like it's nothing." I could barely recognize the determination in my voice, yet felt feral and raw. "Perhaps," he said, leaning closer, his voice low and conspiratorial, "but perhaps I'm not the villain you believe me to be." His laughter churned with haunting implications, and as the crowd's attention wavered between horror and confusion, I realized then that if this was a game he played, I was only at the beginning of it. What other revelations lay ahead? And at what cost? As sirens began to seek us once more, they echoed, not just in a futile chase for a save, but in a reckoning that spiraled closer and closer to an abyss. My heart raced at the thought, what awaited us on the other side of this unfolding chaos? And how much were we willing to lose to discover the truth? The swirling chaos around us thickened like smoke, suffocating every breath that sought to escape. I stood surrounded by a sea of strangers, their faces flickering with fear, confusion, and a desperation that intertwined like an intricate tapestry woven from the threads of loss. The reality of the situation was too grim to bear. In my mind, every heartbeat echoed Sam's name, a fragile melody caught beneath the weight of impending doom. The elderly woman beside me clutched my arm, grounding my spiraling thoughts. Her grip was surprisingly fierce, a testament to the inner strength that often emerged in moments of vulnerability. "We need to step back, we can't lose hope," she whispered, her voice laced with warmth even as her eyes reflected the shadows of uncertainty. There was a profound strength in her words, an acknowledgement of the tumult around us that offered a flicker of sanctuary amidst the storm, but as I looked up, my gaze found the millionaire once more. His confidence hung around him like a well-tailored suit, tailored meticulously to fit. "Hope, you're living in a fantasy," he declared, his voice just loud enough to penetrate the rising din. "You think kindness will conquer all? Look around." His outstretched arm gestured towards the embers of fear crackling in the crowd, a reminder of our vulnerability, of Sam who lay trapped, exposed, caught beneath the jagged shards of an accident that had derailed our lives. The siren's wail brought a reflective quiet, a stillness that swallowed the crowd. We were all suspended in a moment of collective dread, looking skyward as if expecting salvation to descend from the heavens. Instead, one by one, our gazes shifted back to the man who was shaping this dark narrative, and I felt the pulse of humanity roar to life behind me. "Maybe there's more to this than you want us to see," I shouted, the words tumbling from my lips like a dam bursting. "You're a part of something greater than yourself, and yet your arrogance blinds you." My heart, emboldened by desperation, surged with the belief that in our confrontation lay an ember of power, a force that could not be snuffed out. His expression shifted ever so slightly, a crack in the armor of his smugness allowing a hint of uncertainty to glisten through. "Oh, Hope," he said, his tone dangerously smooth, "do remember, I didn't break him, but I may have the means to shape what follows. An investment, perhaps, in the right outcomes." The implication hung heavy in the air, and gasps erupted, a collective understanding that his game was far more sinister than a mere accident. Suddenly, a movement in the periphery drew my eye. A young boy stood, his knuckles white as he clutched his mother's hand. His face was streaked with tears, his eyes wide as he looked back and forth between the crowd and the scene of confusion. A mother reflected his terror, the stark vulnerability of someone clinging to the fragile tether of hope. In that moment, I recognized a beautiful truth: this was not just my fight, or Sam's, it was a universality of suffering entwined with the silent strength of community. Before I could begin to process the realization blooming within me, an unexpected voice broke the tension. "Over here." A paramedic, emerging from the swirling chaos, gestured toward an ambulance that had pulled to a stop, sirens fading into an uncertain hush. "We need volunteers to help direct traffic. If anyone can, we need assistance." Laughter erupted as if it were an incantation, unifying the crowd. Strangers turned into allies, a shared mission igniting the embers of humanity that had been smoldering beneath the weight of despair. I felt a surge of determination, propelled by the impulse to act. "Let's go!" I cried, the words igniting the spark of hope that danced like flame through the crowd. As I joined the throng of people rushing toward the ambulance, relief washed over me, giving birth to an astonishing sense of purpose. We had exchanged our fear for action, and for a fleeting moment, we became a force. In that teaching moment, kindness unraveled against cruelty, rippling outward. Like the wings of a phoenix rising from the ashes of devastation, but at the periphery, I caught sight of the millionaire again, his face taut with hidden fury. In his eyes lingered a darkness, a suggestion that he was not yet finished with us. As I turned my attention back to the task before me, the air thickened with anticipation, and I felt my heart pounding faster. The deeper game remained shrouded in mystery, a specter lurking in the shadows of our newfound unity, and then, as if it were choreographed, a muffled sound came from the ambulance, a slip of paper floating from the back door, gliding into the swirling winds. I reached for it instinctively, the urgency propelling me forward. As I unfolded the note, the world around me shifted once more. A revelation, scrawled in a hastily written script, if I can't have what I want, he'll take what you love. The walls of my heart took a blow, and an icy realization gripped me. This calamity wasn't merely a consequence of negligence, it was layered with intent and intricate web spun from malice. A resolution gripped my chest, but as I turned to face the gathering storm, the shadows of the unknown loomed larger than hope itself. What lay ahead was not merely survival, it was a race against an unseen threat that played with our lives like pawns in a game of chess. The gathered crowd seemed to pulse with a collective heartbeat, a rhythm matching my own escalating fear. Each person was a fragile vessel, carrying their unique burdens, yet somehow, we seemed connected, intertwined in our shared plight, shared through emotions that clashed and mingled like paint on a canvas. The elderly woman still clung to my arm, her grip fading, yet her eyes remained fierce, reflecting a fire of defiance that would not be extinguished easily. The note lay heavy in my palm, words like a venomous snake coiled and waiting to strike. I glanced at the millionaire across the way, his features hardening into a mask of anger. What had once been confidence now morphed into something darker, more predatory. The realization struck me: Harda was not just a passive observer in this tragedy, he was playing a deeper game, manipulating this horror like a maestro conducting a sinister symphony. Before I could process my emotions further, the young boy from earlier stepped forward, inadvertently breaking through the barrier of dread. "Is my friend going to be okay?" he asked, his voice trembling as he clutched his mother's hand. Her expression was strained with anxiety, but she tried to soften her features for him, to offer a semblance of assurance. In that moment, I permitted myself to connect with their innocence, their pain spilling forth a thread of compassion that wove through the chaotic humanity surrounding us. "It's going to be okay," I murmured, kneeling down to his level, searching for words to comfort him. "They're working hard to help everyone. Your friend has a lot of people who care about him, just like you." The boy's large eyes widened, absorbing my reassurance like a sponge. He nodded slowly, though doubt flickered across his face, mingling with hope, a mixture so delicately balanced, it threatened to tip at any moment. "Can I help?" he replied, his childish resolve stronger than any adult's despair. There was something noble in that small offer, a reminder that kindness could blossom in the darkest of spaces. It reminded me of Sam, his spirit, his drive to stand up in moments of pain. As I watched this brave boy, a small seed of inspiration unfurled within me. The elderly woman squeezed my arm again, this time the grip filled with urgency. "We can't wait for anyone else to save us, dear. Let's channel this strength into action," she urged, her voice resolute, piecing me back together. Her unwavering belief reignited the fire of determination surging within me. We began to coordinate with the paramedics, directing traffic, assisting people who had been separating from loved ones in the panic. For each person we guided to safety, I felt a small victory against the looming despair. Paradoxically, amidst our isolation, we forged a collective belonging. Each kind gesture was a brushstroke on the canvas of our reality, illustrating the depth of our shared humanity. Yet, the millionaire's shadow loomed large. I could feel the tension radiating off him, like heat from a nearby flame. It became increasingly clear that he was a catalyst for chaos, the architect behind the greed that had twisted this tragedy. I caught sight of him conversing with a few men wearing dark suits, their postures rigid, their faces void of emotion. An unsettling knot formed in my stomach, a premonition that there was something more to this situation than we had grasped. Hope surged and waned in cycles, but as the afternoon sun dipped lower in the sky, painting everything in hues of gold, I sensed an uneasy shift around us. Moments of comedic relief bubbled up in the crowd. Someone had pulled out a guitar, strumming soft chords that danced through the air, a beacon of warmth in a sea of anxiety. People began to sway in unison, laughter erupting like fireworks amidst the tension. It was an unexpected and beautiful reminder that life, even in darkness, could illuminate some glimmer of joy. Suddenly, a commotion broke through the fragile euphoria. A shout aloud, chilling cry that sent shudders through the crowd. "He's here! The man with the suit!" A ripple of shock swept through the congregation as the atmosphere thickened with dread. The millionaire had taken notice, his face now etched with an unsettling smile. In the distance, I caught sight of Sam's father, pushed through the throng of concerned onlookers. His face was a ghastly shade of white, eyes wild and glistening with unshed tears. What is happening? Where's my boy? He struggled against the handlers who attempted to keep him at bay, desperation clawing at his throat. Time seemed to stretch as I sprinted towards him, eager to bridge the gap between our hearts. We have people working on it. Please, just hang on. I shouted, but with each moment, it felt like we were losing ground, time slipping away like sand, but the millionaire was not done with us yet. His voice rang out, insidiously smooth, cutting through the crowd's growing panic. Oh, but what if I told you, dear folks, that Save the Boy's fate lies within your hands? Everyone has a price. An icy chill snaked down my spine as the crowd shifted uneasily, eyes darting between me, Sam's father, and the man cloaked in darkness. The revelation lingered in the air, a silent challenge that ignited the storm of conscience within me. What price would one pay for love? The tension thickened, swelling like the pulse of a drum, echoing an ominous call to action. In that fractured moment, everything hung in the balance, and I stood at the precipice before a cliff of unimaginable uncertainty. The crowd rippled with uncertainty, each face reflecting a myriad of emotions: fear, anger, despair. I felt the heat of desperation rise through my chest, coiling tightly around my heart as I faced the millionaire, his words hanging heavy in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. "What's your price?" someone shouted, a voice trembling yet defiant. The crowd shifted, murmurs rising like a fierce tide, and I caught the glimpse of a woman I had seen earlier, her face lined with worry but those eyes burning with a quiet resolve. She was ready for battle, ready to stand against this monster that dared to toy with our hearts. That I turned towards Sam's father, a figure of shaken resolve standing amongst the waves of emotion. His vulnerability was a raw wound laid bare, and in it, I saw the embodiment of a father's love, clawing through every desperation, every fear for his child. I reached for his shoulder, grounding him, and found my own heart finding the rhythm of his unruly anguish. "Listen to me," I whispered urgently. "We can't let him divide us. If he thinks he can turn our hope into despair, we have to show him he's wrong. Love is stronger than greed." His eyes met mine, swimming with pain, yet the tiniest flicker of agreement sparked between us. We were striving for the same goal: saving Sam. Suddenly, I felt the elderly woman's strong grip on my arm again, grounding me in the moment. Just as I wrestled with the monstrous shadows lurking on the periphery of our gathering, quiet voices began to rise around us, a symphony of shared passion, a collective pulse of defiance resonating with me. "We need to join together. Show him we'll never turn on each other," shouted a young man, his voice rising high above the din. Around us, hesitant faces transformed into fierce masks of determination. That I glanced back at the millionaire, expecting to find him reveling in our disarray. Instead, he stood eerily still, considering us with those piercing eyes. There was a glimmer of something unsettling in his smilia confidence that hinted at an exacting plan lurking just beneath the surface. His gaze slid back to me, a challenge igniting once more, as if to say our unity was merely a dance for entertainment. As the tension coiled like a taut string, my heart pounded with fear and fierce resolve. "What do you want?" I shouted, raising my voice against the heavy weight of silence. "You think you can conquer us with your games of cruelty? Love isn't bound by a price tag." The wind whipped through the crowd, stirring the throwaway remnants of panic into a whirlwind of rallying cries. We were not just faces in the crowd, we were warriors fueled by love, compassion, and an innate desire to shield one another from the darkness that threatened to consume us. The millionaire's expression faltered, if only for a heartbeat, and in that moment, I seized the opportunity. "We stand united. We are not pieces to be traded, we are souls intertwined by tragedy, and no amount of money can shatter that." A collective roar surged forward from our makeshift brigades, the vulnerable in defiance, the fearful united echoing through the gusts that scuttled across the scene. Hope flickered in the eyes of those around me, growing strength as despair's grip loosened, each shout bringing us closer to reclaiming power over our destiny. As the energy swept through the crowd, my gaze darted to the cowering mother holding the young boy. She smiled softly at him and gestured, her expression radiating that rare gem of defiance, encouraging him to join the chorus. He stepped forward beside her, his voice clearing as he joined in, bright and innocent, a reminder of why we fought, but then a surprising twist struck. The millionaire's laughter rang sharply along the atmosphere, breaking through the tide of our collective resolve. "How noble," he retorted, eyes glinting with malicious delight. "But you underestimate your humanity. Every heart has a weakness, and I'm sure there's a way to manipulate that." Perhaps a little wager. A wave of horror washed over us, and I could feel the panic rise once more. My stomach twisted into knots as I searched for answers amidst the spiraling confusion. "What are you talking about? What kind of wager?" I implored, desperate to grasp what he truly meant. That he smirked, taking a step closer, the crowd parting slightly instinctively in fear. "I'll lay forth a challenge that will reveal the strength or weakness of your so-called love. Gather your bets. Life, loyalty, and sacrifice are at stake. Decide whose heart is worth what. With every moment wasted, your time dwindles. The child? Yours to save, but soon, I will make my move." Again, the man was shrouded in chaos, leaving threads of uncertainty hanging in the air, tangible and maddening. The reaction swelled among the crowd, voices raised high, arguing, pleading, shaking. It felt as if the air itself held its breath. It was in this pregnant pause that I felt a shattering fear surge through me. That I faced Sam's father, every fiber of my being resonating with the relentless desire to protect him and the boy. But the path ahead twisted into an unexpected labyrinth of moral do's and don'ts, testing the very fabric of our bonds. The heartache could drown us if we didn't act quickly. "Let's not play his game," I managed to assert through my own rising panic. "We can find a way to save Sam without losing each other." But the defiance in the eyes around me began to flicker, like candle flames in a windstorm, and for a moment, I understood how fragile our connection truly was. Would we succumb to the manipulation, or would we transcend barriers built by fear? And as the moment stretched taut, ready to snap, the chilling realization dawned: if love is a battlefield, what sacrifices will each of us be willing to make, and how far will we push the boundaries before losing everything? The silence threatened to fracture under the weight of our choices as I turned slowly to face the man once more, uncertain of the steps ahead. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown echoing toward an unforeseen fate. The air buzzed with confusion, a volatile mix of emotions crashing like waves against the shore. The millionaire stood there, a masterful puppet master orchestrating a cruel symphony of hope and despair. My heart raced as I looked from his insidious grin to the faces of the crowd. Their resolve was shifting like sand under the weight of his words. "How can we trust each other when this man could pit us against one another?" A voice broke through the chorus of nervous chatter, a young woman, tears glistening in her defiant eyes. "What makes us any different from pawns in his grand game?" The murmurs of doubt flared, threatening the fragile unity we had fought so hard to cultivate. "Each of us has a story, a life that's intertwined," I said, struggling to keep my voice from shaking. "He can't dim that light. We're stronger together, even if we have to face our fears." My own words felt weak against the tide of despair rolling over us. But then, amidst the uncertainty, a piercing beacon of hope flickered. An older man in the crowd, his face lined with wisdom and experience, stepped forward. "Listen to your heart," he urged, his voice steady amidst the storm. "The greatest challenges don't define us, they reveal us. We must not allow greed to fracture our bonds. When times are dark, that's when kindness shines the brightest." His words echoed with a profound truth. I remembered the warmth of small gestures, an outstretched hand, a shared smile in the depths of despair. It was that kindness that had kept us afloat, that had ignited the fire of connection even amid fear. Together, I yelled above the rising clamor, "We can ignite kindness in a dark world. Let's pledge to save Sam without surrendering our hearts." Hope surged anew in our ranks, igniting flickers of determination amid the uncertainty. Suddenly, a woman from the back stepped forward, her hands trembling as she held out a small, ragged notebook. "This is my son's journal," she cried, her voice wrapped in desperation. "He wrote about his dreams of being a hero and helping others. We must honor that spirit right now. Let's each write our own commitment in this journal, a promise that we will stand strong, no matter how wretched the game becomes." Her raw emotion swept through the crowd, and I felt a pang deep within. We were more than just lost souls, we were the storytellers of our lives, each line and verse intertwining, leading us toward a complex tapestry of love and resilience. One by one, hands reached for the notebook, each signature a defiance against the malignant greed that threatened to tear us apart. Names were inscribed, some ardently bold, others scrawled in shaky letters, amplifying their vulnerability. A spark of unity bloomed amid the fear, our collective pledge simmered in the air, pulsing with renewed life. Among the names, I noticed familiar ones that stirred emotions: a mother's name, a child's, a dedicated teacher's. Each gave strength to the notion that we were bound by something immeasurably profound. Those bonds couldn't be bought or sold, and every stroke of the pen rekindled hope in our hearts, but just as we began to feel fortified by the energy of our camaraderie, a sharp laugh pierced the moment, and the millionaire's voice rang out with a chilling certainty. "How quaint," he mocked, eyes glinting like steel under the fading light. "You think those signatures will save you? Each of you has an artifact to trade. What about the secrets you hide? What dark truths linger beneath the surface? I can promise you, those weaknesses will be the very strings that pull you apart." A wave of dread washed over me, for each word felt like an unraveling thread, threatening the very fabric of our resolve. The crowd stirred uneasily again, the bonds forming between us suddenly feeling fragile against the shadows he cast. No. I shouted, feeling the confusion inside me swell to an overwhelming pitch. "We can't let him turn our fears against us. Our lives are not up for trade. Love is a legacy, a gift that remains, even when we face our doubts." But doubt had already begun to seep in, festering unease, creeping through hesitant hearts. As we exchanged glances, a deep-seated fear bubbled. What were we willing to reveal in this standoff? Who among us had secrets lurking in shadowy depths? Then, a sudden shift occurred. An elderly man stepped forward, his face a mask of grief and determination. "My daughter," he said, voice strained yet unwavering. "She's been lost. If that means more to him than anything, so be it." He pulled back his coat to reveal an old, crinkled photograph. "This is the last picture I have of her. I'm willing to bet it. Can we use it to save our children?" Gasps rippled through the crowd, horror washing over me, each heartache a reminder of the stakes we played. A gasp escaped from the woman beside him, her horror evident. "You can't. What next?" "Your life. Once you place a bet, who says he won't ask for more?" But the man continued undeterred, a fierce love blazing within him. "We must be willing to risk it all to save our kids. Wouldn't you gamble a piece of your heart for theirs?" As I watched the crowd struggle between fear and hope, an agonizing realization gripped me: the lines between heroism and desperation were maddeningly thin. One brave act could unravel the threads that held us together or weave an unbreakable bond. Could each of us confront our past, surrender the weight of secrets, to embrace the possibility of love that could save us all? Just when I thought I had the grasp on our collective fate, a nervous voice broke through: "What if I can't bear to expose my truth?" A chilling silence followed, each of us grappling with the understanding of vulnerability. Could we truly rise to this occasion? And there I stood, at the very edge of a defining choice. Would I allow the fear of revealing my own burdens to darken the light of hope that blossomed before us? As the crowd shifted restlessly, battling the pull of desperation, my heart thudded with an alarming realization: the answers we sought would come with great sacrifice, yet the stakes had never been closer to home. In that tense moment, the puzzle of hearts, courage, and sacrifice collided into a whirlwind, leaving us teetering at the brink of honesty or the abyss of despair. The weight of the choice hung heavily in the air, a tangible tension that felt inescapable. Faces around me reflected a kaleidoscope of emotions: fear, anger, desperation, but also a flicker of something more tender. I thought back to the elderly man, his willingness to gamble the photograph of his daughter, and how that singular act of courage made me reconsider the depths of our bonds. Darkness lurked in the corners of my mind, whispering doubts and teasing truths best left unspoken. What was it that I had kept hidden all this time? The air felt electric as each heartbeat seemed to echo through the gathering, every unsaid thought pressing down on our shoulders like a weight, ready to crush us under the burden of our secrets. As I glanced around, I noticed a young boy, perhaps no more than 8, clutching a stuffed bear to his chest, watching everything unfold with wide, innocent eyes. My heart ached at the sight of him. How could we gamble with lives when there was a child who believed in something greater? The roar of despair within me surged again, striving to drown out the dark narratives taking shape. Listen, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, honed by a surreal mix of urgency and solidarity. We cannot offer up our hearts to this man. We owe it to each other and to who we love to fight back. We are more than objects to wager in a cruel game. So, let's turn this around. Let's share our stories, our truths, because vulnerability is not weakness. It is courage disguised as honesty. It brings us closer, not apart. A stir of surprise rippled through the crowd. I could see the hesitant gear of their minds shifting. Could honesty be a weapon? A collective shield? People exchanged glances, some nodding, others but cautiously skeptically. Okay, a woman with tear-streaked cheeks said, stepping forward. I will start. Her voice trembled as she shared her story. I lost my mother when I was young because I was too ashamed to admit I was struggling in school. The last words I spoke to her were words of anger. If I had just been honest about how much I needed help, maybe I wouldn't have lost her. You could feel the pain wrapped in acknowledgement drown out the laughter of the millionaire at her admission. The air felt heavier yet connected. Grief was a language shared among us, and suddenly, it transformed into bonding, stitching our wounds together through mutual pain. One by one, more stepped forward, weaving a tapestry of vulnerability, confessions mingling with stories of missed opportunities, heartbreak, and loss. For every voice that spoke, a hand squeezed a neighbor's reassuringly, melding our fears together until they felt manageable. But with every confession, my own truth loomed greater, a shadow I had avoided for too long. I stayed silent, my heart pounding fiercely, echoing against the walls of my internal struggle. What was I so afraid to share? Then, the young boy clutched his bear tightly and spoke up, his small voice breaking through my haze. My mom always says that secrets can be like heavy rocks. They stay in your heart until you let them out. If you don't, they make you sad. I don't want to be sad anymore. I end that innocent proclamation. The room fell still, and my heart lurched violently within me. I felt something break in my chest, a binding resolve that suddenly made my truth impossible to carry alone. I stepped forward, trembling with each echoing heartbeat, vulnerability splattering like paint across the canvas of the moment. I have kept secrets that are not mine alone to bear. My sister, I lost her to a decision I thought I could control. I pushed her away, thinking it was for the best, but it destroyed everything. She was the light in my life, and I let fear of judgment keep me silent. If I had just told her how much I needed her, things would be different. I could feel tears welling in my eyes, cascading down in torrents. The room was quiet, weighty with my admission, ghosts stirring in the depths of our collective vulnerability. Then, beyond the silent empathy and understanding, a voice called out from the back, raging with bitterness. It was the millionaire, reveling in the unraveling before him, scratching the itch of desperation that played out like a grand performance. Beautiful, he said, that mocking smile creeping back onto his face. But what you fail to grasp is that these little confessions will amount to nothing against the darkness that truly binds you. You think your stories can outshine the truth? Each of you is flawed, and I will find your weaknesses. I will pry them from you like secrets, and you will pay dearly for them. His words dripped with poison, darkening the heavy moment of revelation we had shared, and that small flicker of hope felt threatened again. I could almost see the threads weaving back into knots around our hearts, each revelation filling the millionaire's ledger of power. But then, a glimmer flickered amidst the impending shadow. A single hand reached out, intertwining with mine in solidarity. It was the older man from before, his unwavering spirit radiating strength that seemed to fill the void the millionaire sought to create. Then let him try, he said, his voice a binding shield against the storm. For every secret we share, we will grow stronger. Together, we will stand, no matter how many rocks he throws. And if we must fight with our truths, then let's share them with open hearts. As each hand clasped around mine in a growing chain of unity, I felt a warmth spread among us, igniting a surge of resilience that began to reshape the space. But just then, through the chaos, a muffled sound echoed the unmistakable noise of a chime. I felt the chill run down my spine as the millionaire raised an eyebrow, an ominous glint in his eye. "Ah, but it seems another card is about to be played. Are you ready to embrace your truths, or are you prepared for the cost of your concealment?" Waves of tension rippled through the crowd as the implications of his words washed over us, the warmth of solidarity knocking against the impending chill of what was yet to come. Fear mingled with hope, but one certainty remained: whatever lay beyond that chime, our courage had only begun to blossom, and the stakes were about to rise ominously. As the crowd held their breath, a deafening silence coated the space, and I stood on the precipice of what would come next, my heart suspended in time, aching for a resolution that seemed farther away than ever. The atmosphere thickened with an unsettling tension, an electric vibration that wove through the mingled breaths of the crowd. Each person stood poised at the edge of their stories, the weight of unshackled secrets looming like a dark cloud overhead. Yet as the ringing of the unseen chime echoed throughout the room, it felt as though the world itself was holding its breath. "Step forward," the millionaire commanded, his voice slithering through the silence. "Who among you will be the first to embrace your fate? After all, the time for hesitation is over." He relished in the fear that cascaded through us, his smile dripping with an insidious satisfaction. A chill washed over me as I swallowed hard, dread pooling in my stomach as I surveyed those around me. The boy still clutched his bear firmly to his chest, and the older man's grip on my hand tightened, anchoring me amidst the shrill disquiet. Each person's face mirrored my own internal struggle, fear entwined with a burgeoning hope that perhaps, together, we could navigate this dark maze. Then, unexpectedly, a young woman stepped forward from the throng. Her hands trembled, but her determination burned through her fear, illuminating her resolve. "I'll go," she said, her voice calm yet resolute, radiating strength that belied her fragile frame. "I refuse to let him make us pawns in his game." With that declaration, she began to share her own truth, speaking of the burdens she carried, the struggles of being a single mother and her perpetual battle against crippling self-doubt. "I sacrificed my dreams for others, convinced that being a good mother meant sacrificing my own identity," she admitted, her voice growing stronger as her narrative unraveled. "But I am starting to see that I cannot pour from an empty cup." Empathy washed over us, each confession weaving a tapestry of shared struggles with threads of resilience. Several others joined her, some speaking of loneliness hounding them in their busy lives, others addressing the mental health battles they faced behind the facades they kept. Each story ignited a flicker of connection, transforming the air from oppressive weight to echoing catharsis. But as more courageous voices stepped into the light, the millionaire's expression darkened, a storm brewing behind his polished facade. It triggered something within him, a desperate need to regain control. "Enough of this sentimental theater," he boomed, the sharp authority of his voice slicing through our shared vulnerability. "Let me show you the real cost of your candor." With a flourish, he produced a gleaming device from his pocket, an elaborate silver key fob, adorned with intricate engravings. The device emitted a soft humming that filled the air, sending a shiver of unease racing down my spine. "We're going to play a little game. For every truthful confession shared today, one of you will be selected to pay for it. Anyone willing to forfeit your well-being for your newfound courage?" A murmur erupted within the crowd, a cacophony of gasps and incredulous disbelief. I could feel the ties of unity we'd built beginning to fray under the weight of his intimidation tactics. "What do you mean?" a voice called out, hope wavering. "We shouldn't pay for telling the truth." But truth comes with a price, doesn't it?" The millionaire smirked, relishing the intensity of the moment. "You'd be surprised what lengths a person will go to when faced with the raw emotion of their darkest secrets. Are you all ready to see just how much you desire to protect one another?" The unease settled over us as a revelatory chill. Taking my moment to breathe, I refused to back down. With that final recount echoed in the room, I turned to those beside me. His was not just about my or their truths anymore, it was about us, the bonds we'd woven. But a question gnawed at my insides: what would become of us, now that our raw emotions would act as bait for his darkness? Suddenly, the chime rang again, almost like a heartbeat of the room, and the millionaire grinned wider, now more ravenous for the unfolding madness. "Let us see who shall bear the weight of your confessions. I assure you, you'll come to appreciate just how fragile hope can be." The silence was suffocating, hearts raced in sync with the concealed terror that dripped from his lips. Just then, as if a fire were igniting there and then, the innocent boy stood from his corner, his small frame dwarfed by the looming shadows, determined eyes fixed on the millionaire. "No. That isn't right," he yelled. "You can't hurt people for being honest." We were trying to be brave. The audacity of his proclamation struck through the tension like a bolt of lightning. There, in that moment, amidst the chaos of fright and uncertainty, the boy's bravery offered a poignant reminder of innocency, an unexpected act of generous defiance against the overwhelming tide. But how far could his valor extend against the million-dollar cruelty that awaited us? All eyes shifted, me heart raced as uncertainty began to teeter closer to disbelief. The million-dollar signs of his grim amusement loomed larger now, and the impending cost of our shared truths lay suspended in a haunting balance. As the moment hung in the air, we faced the new layer of tension layering over us. So tightly could we hold on to hope before that delicate thread snapped. Today's confessions may cost more than anyone realized, and as yet unseen paths began to unfold. Behind the veil of fragile vulnerability that weighed on us all, our burdens collided and the chime rang one last time, echoing a promise and a threat tangled together, a prelude to a confrontation that had only just begun. The air crackled with tension, every breath we took seeming both electrified and heavy with the uncertainty that hung between us and the millionaire. The boy's brave outburst kindled a flicker of unity, awakening something dormant inside me, a fierce desire to protect, to shield this fragile group from the dark machinations at play. They could not turn our truths into weapons against us, nor could they use our fears as fuel for their cruelty. "You want a game?" I shouted, my voice rough but clear. "Let it be one of truth versus deception, of courage against cruelty. You think you can play with our vulnerabilities? You play with fire, and you will get burned." The millionaire's amused smirk faltered for a fleeting moment, confusion mingling with surprise. He had underestimated our resolve, brushing it off as mere sentimental folly. But we were not just victims in a cruel charade, we were a collective force born out of raw, shared experience. Together, we will claim our power. I cried, rallying those around me as I stepped forward, drawing strength from the collective heartbeat that pulsated amongst us. Before I could lose my momentum, voices began to rise in affirmation. "We will not back down," declared the elderly woman's firm resolve. "Our truths will shield us." Others echoed her sentiment, their voices entwined in a chorus of shared strength. "We stand united." Another cried, and with each proclamation, the grip of despair slackened, making way for determination's fierce grip. The millionaire stood there, momentarily caught off guard by our unexpected unity, his mocking grin faltering as he resumed his role as the orchestrator of chaos. "Very well," he said, clearing his throat, "if that's the game you wish to play." The tension became palpable as he lifted the silver device, its polished surface glinting like a weapon poised over our heads. Then, almost instinctively, I reached for the boy, kneeling so that our eyes met. "You must promise me," I said softly, "that you'll stay close. We will not let him hurt you." He nodded, clutching his stuffed bear tighter, a beacon of innocence and a reminder of what we were fighting for. The millionaire's voice boomed over us, casting a shadow over our burgeoning hope. "Let us begin, shall we? One by one, your truths will reveal the price of your solidarity." As he pressed a button on the device, a low hum pulsed through the air, setting the room alive with foreboding energy. Suddenly, the lights dimmed to an eerie glow, projecting a projection on the far wall, a collage of images from our lives, personal moments of vulnerability and sorrow. Each face appeared, including the boy's, the elderly woman's, and mine. Secrets that had remained tucked away began to play like a movie for all to witness. The crowd gasped collectively, uncertainty rippling through them. "This is just the beginning," the millionaire taunted, stepping closer. "Every flick of a switch can bring forth a truth you may wish you never revealed." At that moment, I felt an overwhelming surge of defiance. "But these are not just secrets," I cried back, "they are the stories of our lives, laden with lessons learned. They hold power, not the weakness you think." My voice rang through the cavernous space, the conviction fueling the hearts around me. Each story played out, highlighting the heartbreak, loss, betrayal, and ultimately, resilience of the people before me. The young mother stepped up, sharing her struggles as a single parent, weaving community where there had been isolation. The elderly man laid bare the loss of his children, speaking of his steadfast will to honor their memory by helping others. Their revelations did not break us, they empowered us, refuting the miserable expectations the millionaire cast upon us. The crowd shifted, sparked by newfound courage. One by one, they began to share truths intermingling with laughter and tears. Some told of moments they felt utterly unseen, others spoke of bold choices made in love or loss. Each story connected, strengthening the intricate tapestry we had woven through our collective courage. But even in those moments of camaraderie, I could feel the millionaire's malice lurking just beneath the surface. The attention he redirected toward the messy beauty of our shared truths served only to incite a darker game. How could we keep our hearts open while navigating the heavy tides he brought? A chilling reminder floated through my mind: what cost would we unintentionally pay for this vulnerability? As the crowd rallied, I noticed the boy was no longer distressed, instead, he looked on with hope. His innocence fortified our aim, his insights brightening our shared darkness. But in the midst of the uprising, reality struck, causing my heart to plummet. I needed to confront the looming shadow of the millionaire, this twisted game curator who thrived off chaos. With every confession shared, I realized that his power was dwindling, but my own unresolved truths bore heavily on me. What had I kept hidden all this time? I felt the anxiety surging, choking the last flecks of resolve. But now was not the time to falter. I owed them my honesty as much as they owed me theirs. That I took a deep breath, stepping forth as every eye in the room turned toward me, drawn by the surge of energy that pulsed through our collective congregation. "Hey race, my truth," I began. "I've led myself to believe fear was safer than love, the fear that if I allowed myself to love too deeply, I would be left shattered when it was gone. I lost my sister to that fear, my inability to share my truths robbed her of the support she needed." I looked out, gathering the energy of the crowd as their blended strength resonated around me. Today, I refuse to let fear dictate my existence. Today we turn fear itself into our anthem of courage. A tense silence followed, and then a roaring wave of applause surged around me. Recognition lit their faces, kindling a spark that had been dimmed too long. They were stirred by vulnerability, hovering at the precipice of a metamorphosis born anew by honesty and revelation. But just as the ambience billowed with renewed life, the millionaire's laugh rebounded again, offering a cruel edge. "You may think you have the upper hand, but you underestimate the pulse of humanity. Each of you stands intertwined, each thread binds you to your vulnerabilities. Faced against the truth, let me show you a game you won't forget." That I felt the breath hitch in my throat as he pressed a button on the device once more, causing the room to swirl in a kaleidoscope of colors. A shadow stretched across the floor, shimmering forms began to emerge, like specters materializing from the unseen. They looked familiar, faces and figures of those we had lost, reflections of second chances squandered crisscrossed through our memories like flames licking at our heels. Glimpses of past selves caught in moments of tragedy resurfaced before our eyes, moments of grief, desperation, disappointment, thoughts reflected back as if the millionaire was plucking each memory from our minds. The crowd flinched, whispers filled the air, casting a veil of panic. No. I shouted, heart racing, infuriated. "These are our truths. You will not make them our burden." As if answering my resolve, the boy stepped forward beside me, filled with innocence yet unyielding in his conviction. "There are stories," he asserted bravely. "And we make them beautiful, no matter what. They don't belong to you." In that stance, a collective strength surged through the air. As illustrated as the memories were, our truths held far more power. We were shaping our narrative, no longer the silent participants in someone else's story. The millionaire's facade began to crack, disbelief carving lines upon his once calm exterior. "Let us reclaim our stories," the young mother said fiercely, "because they hold memories, soft loves fought for, laughter shared. No amount of fear will hold us back any longer." In perfect synchronicity, the crowd grew ferocious in their unison, each voice amplifying the others. "Our stories are worth celebrating. They will not be silenced." As the room pulsed with a vibrancy unlike anything I had felt before, it was as if we were weaving a shield, a tapestry strengthened by the understanding that we had the ability to navigate through the darker waters together. The millionaire's authority felt weakened, and I stood beside the boy, whose small frame radiated a force beyond his years, a beacon of hope for a brighter future. And then the unthinkable happened. The shadows began to bend and shift, retreating as laughter erupted. Our truths pierced through the layers of darkness. The weight we thought would drown us became lifted, illuminating the space with the golden glow of our stories, sharing the light that I in that moment. A brilliant notion struck me, a realization that ignited resolution. When we reclaim our stories and embrace our truths, we become warriors. The tide of hope surged in the room, and I felt it paramount at last. We will not waver or falter. Every scar is a testament to our survival. Each heartache an emblem of the love we've shown. The laughter crescendoed, reaching a peak as the shimmering figures began to swirl, detaching from past and moving toward the light we had created together. The millionaire's confidence turned to disbelief to fear, as shadows of our past began to relent against the brilliance of burgeoning camaraderie. Together we will rise, I shouted, the chorus echoing through my heart as it sent a ripple of warmth through the room like a tidal wave, washing over every shadow that once lurked. With that revelation, I recognized that the power had shifted. In our adherence to our truths, we had ignited a fire beneath the million gross expectations he had preordained. The shackles of shame burst apart at last, each heartbeat synchronized with the sound of liberation echoing, our lives interwoven against adversity. As the crowd illuminated the shadows, I turned to the millionaire, grounding my gaze upon him, determined. You may have crafted your game, but today, we chart our own course. With that final declaration, certainty surged inside me. Our hope was no longer sealed within fear, but blossomed into possibility. In this moment of liberation, I glanced over at the boy, who stood smiling widely with the bear in his arms, a look of wondrous conviction lighting his face. He had successfully transformed our fears into triumph, and in that pivotal moment, as the echoes of defiance rolled through the air, I carried a singular thought: the shadows that had loomed over us were fading, ultimately giving way to the unmistakable brightness of a shared future, the true heartbeat of love, courage, and unity. In a world bound by darkness, we had proven that hope always finds a way to rise again. We had chosen each other. We had chosen joy, and that dim glow of disbelief inside me faded into a radiant warm glow of belief. With one last glance at the figures dispersing before us, I breathed deep and smiled. Today we had not only woven a new story, we had crafted a legacy. With a heart full of gratitude mixed with unyielding faith, I locked eyes with the boy once more. He lifted his stuffed bear high, and surrounded by our sound, I found clarity in one final, resounding truth: love. Our shared journey will always guide us forward, and together, we stepped into the light of a new dawn.